Hello and welcome back to the weekly Just Good Game News, the place for positive gaming news coming at you every Friday afternoon to celebrate various different facets of the industry, whether it is breaking news, rumors, leaks, etc., as well as tips and tricks for the latest games. A video game spotlight in itself where I get to pick a game of the week and say, hey, by the way, did you know this thing existed? As well as various different deals for the week and some community suggested overlooked titles, new or old. Any excuse that we collectively get to talk about the likes of Alpha Protocol or Titanfall 2, I will take. If you'd like to get involved, you can dive over on the Scott Tilford Discord or go to patreon.com/Tilford if you'd like to access the full Just Game show early. But this is the Just Good Game News, as I mentioned, and let's dive in. First up, the breaking feel goods, the breaking news that makes you feel good. Hopefully, you're a Left 4 Dead fan, one of the most popular multiplayer games of all time. This comes from the creator himself, Mike Booth, working on what will be, in theory, finally a new Left 4 Dead. Now, it probably won't be called that, but the dude's got out there and announced that he is working on a new video game, and dude directly references Left 4 Dead. I have to assume because of the trajectory that the follow-ups to this series had, and just how much Back 4 Blood wasn't it. Booth mentioned over on Reddit, I'm excited to share that I'm working on a brand new project, a 4-player co-op shooter built on the foundations of what made Left 4 Dead special. If you enjoyed the teamwork, tension, and replayability of my past games, you'll probably find this one more interesting. It expands on the co-op formula in ways I've wanted to explore for a long time. We're still in the early stages of development, but we're opening up playtests to a limited number of players. If you're interested in joining us on this next adventure and helping shape the game early on, we'd love to have you involved. Now, the whole thing with Mike Booth and Left 4 Dead is kind of fascinating. Like, he initially worked on Left 4 Dead and formed Turtle Rock Studios that went on to do, incredibly misfiring games like Evolve and Back 4 Blood, but he wasn't then directly involved in those titles. As far as I can research, and you can go back and look at the way that his career went across the 2000s and into the 2010s, this is the first time he's returned to this style of game. And a lot of fans of Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 point to this guy as the reason why those original titles were so special. And yes, you can argue it was a point-in-time thing. A lot of people were new to online gaming across the end of the 2000s, and Left 4 Dead was one of those seminal, immediately responsive and super fun tactical co-op experiences that was maybe why it was extra special. But there was a bit of a secret sauce to the immediacy of that game engine and the immediacy of the structure of that overall game that you could just tell your friends, hey, we're playing Left 4 Dead, leap in and have a great time, in the way the likes of Back 4 Blood just got in its own way, and in the way that Evolve back in 2014 just completely whiffed it as another potential follow-up to, the Left 4 Dead energy. So here's hoping it's finally time for another Left 4 Dead, but with a little bit of a different, potentially different name on it. Next up, the Call of Duty movie. Now, this is an exciting thing that has been in the works for over a decade. I remember the initial rumblings of this, and shout out to anybody who remembers the original mention of a Call of Duty movie, or those of us who remember a Splinter Cell movie being talked about way back in 2007. That was just something that came to mind in regards to the times that Hollywood have talked about doing different adaptations. News of a Call of Duty movie, though, comes from a deal that's apparently been struck between Activision and Paramount. And Paramount want to do a whole bunch of movies. They want to have different crossovers, different spin-off franchises. As far as I remember from years and years ago, the idea for Call of Duty movies would always be a split between the World War II era, the Black Ops era. Maybe you would do some future stuff, Advanced Warfare, Infinite Warfare, whatever. But it makes sense to be able to do a handful of different titles in this universe and spin out different tonalities, different casts that you can carry across in terms of casts of actors and everything. It is one of those things where when you look at the way that the Call of Duty is currently rolling out, the amount that they have doubled down on the Black Ops timeline, fleshing out everything in regards to Menendez, being this sort of overall villain, and focusing on, bringing back Milo Ventimiglia as like the lead dude. I just think of him as Peter Petrelli from Heroes, but he's been the face of Black Ops for a little while now, and it seems like they are sort of honing in on this consistent timeline approach where we are telling this ongoing story, even though if you want to do it in game order, if you want to put those games in timeline order, it's something like Black Ops 1, 2, and then 6 and then 7, or Black Ops 2 and then it's a whole thing. But assumedly this will be a way to unify the timeline, do a series of movies going forward that makes a whole lot more sense for newcomers. There is a statement for this as well, coming from Paramount CEO David Ellison, who says he's a lifelong fan And they want to make a movie, quote unquote, designed to thrill Call of Duty's massive global fan base by delivering on the hallmarks of what fans love about the iconic series while boldly expanding the franchise to entirely new audiences. Ellison compares the upcoming production to Top Gun Maverick, which is a really interesting idea. You know, of all the movies that you could look at, for me, Top Gun Maverick stands out as something that champions, realistic stunt work and, like over the top practical effects and things that make sense for a production that is trying to sell you on thrill and risk and genuine escapism. And if that's the direction we're going in, I mean, Call of Duty is known for its overblown set pieces, so maybe that's what he's hinting at when he mentions Top Gun Maverick. The full quote, though, in that regard, he says, "We're approaching this film with the same disciplined, uncompromising commitment to excellence that guided our work on Top Gun Maverick, ensuring it meets the exceptionally high standards this franchise and its fans deserve. I can promise that we are resolute in our mission to deliver a cinematic experience that honors the legacy of this one-in-a-million brand, thrilling longtime fans of Call of Duty while captivating a whole new audience." So again, it makes me think of the overall push that Hollywood has right now, where the new thing to adapt is video games. Where we're done with comic books. I mean, obviously, James Gunn, DC, they're doing as much as they can. But in terms of the mainstream conversation, I think the average person is a little bit sick of superheroes, a little bit sick of comic book movies, and it feels like Hollywood's lens has shifted along, and now it's video game adaptations. Sony got the ball rolling. We've had Uncharted, we've had Gran Turismo, we've had Until Dawn. You've got things like the God of War TV show that's in the works. There's a Horizon TV show that's in the works. All of that is on the Sony side. They formed PlayStation Productions as a way to do, in-house productions, turnover movies, turnover TV shows, and now something like Call of Duty making its way to the big screen is a humongous step in that direction, showing that this is the way that, various different video game companies would like to go, which is kind of fascinating. I'm old enough and I grew up with games being this overlooked medium. I was always the person telling my friends, telling my parents that it was a worthwhile way to spend my time, and I always loved the advancement of the art form over the years. When gaming and video games were inducted into the Museum of Modern Art in 2012 and it was officially recognized as an art form, I was the guy going like, yes, I always knew this, I always knew these stories were worthwhile, I always knew this art form was awesome and incredible and worthwhile, etc. And it's kind of interesting looking at the likes of film embracing that and finally going like, oh, there is some good stuff here, oh, actually we should adapt this, oh, the characters are worth fleshing out in full stories, etc. And so feeling very vindicated as a lifelong gaming fan. And the older you are, the more you will remember how much gaming was frowned upon, how much it was your mum's basement was the go-to descriptor as someone who was playing video games. And we've come a long way, but it is one of those things where I look at the wider landscape of entertainment and the different medium crossovers, and I just think it's kind of cool where gaming is at. I totally get the business reality of they want to make a bunch of movies and TV shows and whatever to get wider audiences in, and then I'm curious what the impact of that is on the game design itself. Do you then have to lower the bar of entry? Do you have to make sure that the average person is getting through your game? Like how much on rails gameplay do you then have to have? Not necessarily in a literal sense, but more signposting. I mean, how many conversations do we have about the yellow paint telling you where to go in a video game, which is a direct response to making sure more people get through video games overall. That's obviously the wider future conversation on this, but it does kind of fascinate me in terms of if you're making a game designed for not only a gaming audience but a casual movie-going audience, then how does that change your game design in itself? I think that's going to be the conversation going forward, as well as just how big these properties can become. Sony are the ones talking about if they design a new IP, they think of TV, movies, and games all at once. They want these crossover IPs from the ground up going forward. So for better or worse, this is the era we're going into, and the likes of Call of Duty is going to be one of the franchises that is the tip of the spear in regards to convincing, mainstream wider audiences that films and gaming can be as one. Next one is just a little bit of an update to the ongoing conversation around the PlayStation 6. It's something that I've mentioned a few times over, and on the full Just Good Game show, we delved into this a little bit more, but we do have an update from reputable leaker Moore's Law is Dead as to the specifications of the PlayStation 6. I will put them on screen. You can have a look. You can see what you think. I have no idea what any of this stuff means. I just kind of went through and looked at the takeaway sentiment, which which is the idea that we already know that the PlayStation 6 is at least so far, is a two-tier system. There's a home console version and there's a portable version of the PlayStation 6. It seems to be Sony's way of getting in on, Nintendo's runaway success with the Switch, and also, carrying forward their own success with the PlayStation Portal, something that they've said they didn't expect to be so successful. Obviously, the Portal is a streaming-only device. As long as you're within a Wi-Fi range or you're within your console's range, you can just stream whatever's on your console itself. So going forward, the PlayStation 6 will have a home console version and also this portable version of the system. Now, the specs mention the idea that the portable version will also be able to be docked, but it seems like Sony is still figuring this stuff out. The takeaway, though, is that the portable version of the PlayStation 6, regardless of its wider features, will ostensibly be a portable PlayStation 5. There is a specific takeaway from Moore's Law is Dead's write-up that mentions that, this PlayStation 6 thing will be about 75% the power of a PlayStation 5. Now, that does put it above the Switch 2, and I think that does open up the conversation as to what do people want from their handhelds. One of the reasons that Nintendo are doing so well is that the Switch 2 is so incredibly well optimized to be able to just have anything put into it from the original Switch, and it'll just auto upscale it because it has all of these background software features like deep learning super sampling, which is just I don't know what you would even call it, a software-based rendering upscaling thing that goes in, looks at the guts of some code and upscales everything. You can tell I barely know what I'm talking about, but I know the results are good. And so I think that's a part of the conversation. What do you want from your handhelds? Do you want big, glitzy, what ostensibly would be big screen experiences, but on the go at the sacrifice of something like battery life, or do you want games that are designed a little bit more for the handheld experience? And especially if we're talking about game design, Nintendo have nailed the overall set of gameplay loops that they put into their titles, the likes of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Mario Odyssey, whatever. You can do long stints on them, or if you only have 20 minutes to spare, you can do a level, you can do a challenge run, you can do like a shrine in Zelda, or one of the separate mini games in, one of the separate trials in Donkey Kong Bonanza. They've found a way to hybridize the two, and I wonder, again, talking about game design, I wonder how much that folds over as well onto the way that, Sony and Microsoft, etc., start making their game. If we have to factor in the hybrid model and the handheld model, then, does that bring about the idea of like, well, we should make it so that, we know that the audience is on the go. Let's make sure that we have games that work on the go as much as they do on the big screen. So yeah, overall going forward, the PlayStation 6 conversation continues to be something that lines up with the way the industry is going overall. And that is very much led by Nintendo because of the Switch. As I'm recording this, there's all the stuff that's about to happen with the Xbox Rogue Ally. Microsoft putting one foot in the hybrid space with a third-party console that they've licensed and put an Xbox button on the Rogue Ally and call that their Xbox handheld, even though that thing is just running Windows. But that's their version of like, hey, is this what you guys want? This system that will let you install games, but will also let you stream stuff in. And then Nintendo, have the first-party approach, and Sony seem to be doing something that is a bit of a hybrid of the two, playing off the PlayStation Portal and bringing in all the lessons learned from, their past failures with the PSP and the PS Vita. Even though I love the PS Vita, that thing clearly wasn't a success across the board. Next up, a new Ghost Recon. It has been a while, and I'm just glad this franchise is coming back, considering how utterly disastrous Ghost Recon Breakpoint was. One of the biggest bombs in Ubisoft history. I'll always remember the headline that the year that thing came out, Ubisoft lost 93% of their operating income just because of how many people did not buy Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Even though Wildlands seemed to do well enough, but that was a weird direction for the franchise. I think a lot of people, when they think of Ghost Recon, they think of Rainbow Six, think about tactical gameplay. And if there's one thing that new title, Ready or Not, proves with its sales and with its dogged devotion to old school tactical first-person shooters, it's that there is an audience waiting to lap this stuff up. And you would hope that Ubisoft have learned that. This comes from Insider Gaming and Tom Henderson over on that website, very much a veteran leaker at this point, detailing all the projects that Ubisoft have in the works for the rest of 2026 and 2027, covering a whole bunch of stuff from the idea of a Rayman remake, which apparently has already been in the works for almost a year at this point, as well as a new Ghost Recon, a new Rainbow Six, which is a tactical spin-off, and various other projects. Now, there is a full list here. We have Project Over, which is the next mainline Ghost Recon, Project Hex, which is the next mainline Assassin's Creed. Now, that one we already know about. That was already revealed. We have a teaser trailer for that. We have Project North, which is the Splinter Cell remake, something that I'm just glad, is still being mentioned and still exists in some form, because I thought Ubisoft would have canned that thing, years ago. But we're still getting the Splinter Cell remake. And we also have Project Blackbird, a new mainline Far Cry game. Now, we know about that, Far Cry 7. It's apparently a roguelike Far Cry, where you beam into the world and you go off against other different villains. You see how far you can progress, and you try the loop again. We'll see how much of that is true once it actually finally comes out. We also have Project Maverick, which is a new Far Cry extraction-based shooter. Henderson says he has a feeling that might get cancelled. Project Rewind is a Prince of Persia remake, something that has been in the works for years. It was restarted development. Initially, it was being put together by Ubisoft Mumbai, or one of the other. It was a newer studio under the Ubisoft umbrella. And sadly, when that game was shown off, and many people might remember this, it looked like hell. And internally, it wasn't received very well either. And so Ubisoft decided to restart the whole thing, which is a bit of a reason why the Prince of Persia IP has been so chopped and changed around. We did get Prince of Persia Lost Crown, which I would say is the best game Ubisoft have put their name to in about 10 years plus. I absolutely love Prince of Persia Lost Crown. It's one of the most overlooked games of the decade so far, and you can pick it up for a lot cheaper these days. But you've got Prince of Persia Lost Crown and the Rogue Prince of Persia, which in itself was made by the team that did Dead Cells. And so you have to assume that all of that was supposed to come after the Sands of Time remake, the thing that would remind everybody why they love Prince of Persia in the first place, and that would have helped with sales for the Lost Crown and potentially, awareness of Rogue Prince of Persia. Both those games haven't done that well, especially Lost Crown. That team was redistributed after that game came out, despite, like I say, the high quality of the title itself. So it's a weird rollout, but we are still, in theory, getting the new Prince of Persia at some point. And Sands of Time is awesome. Like, I'm a Warrior Within guy, shout out to Godsmack. But at the same time, I used to love that trilogy. Sands of Time, Warrior Within, and the Two Thrones? Snakes, whatever, the two men. That was cool at the time. There was stealth in it. Also, we're getting Project Altera, an Animal Crossing-esque type game, Project Crest, a World War II extraction-based shooter, and Project Beyond Good and Evil 2, which Henderson says, I know that referencing that at this point is crazy, but apparently it's still happening. I love that they don't have a code name for that. I love that it's just Project Good and Evil 2. Like, the three people that are still working on that game going like, hey, what, in the team meetings, like, we're still going to be doing this. Can you put us on the docket? What an insane state that game has been in. We've had technical demos, it's been officially confirmed, we've had a couple of different teasers, but we're yet to see anything in, I think, about 3 years. So maybe it'll eventually come out. There is a Beyond Good and Evil 1 complete remake. There's a remaster, the HD edition from a good few years ago, but there is a remake from about 2 or 3 years ago that is awesome. If you like, if you want to go into something completely fresh and experience a really cool world that has so much character and really awesome writing, I will shout out Beyond Good and Evil. The remake of it is awesome. Didn't sell very well because Ubisoft barely advertised it, but that is a really good overhaul of an already, cult classic. Beyond Good and Evil fans are some of the most dedicated people you will find, and it's worth shouting out that if you want to experience what the big deal is with Beyond Good and Evil and why they've been able to keep this thing in the works for so long, go check out the original game in its remake form. You hopefully will not be disappointed. In terms of wider stuff, Henderson mentions future projects beyond 2027 include The Division 3, the next mainline The Crew game, and multiple other mainline and smaller Assassin's Creed experiences. Ubisoft are also currently developing other small experiences connected to their IPs, including a turn-based Rainbow Six game. I'll take turn-based anything. I love Gears Tactics, I love myself some XCOM, I love that Metal Slug grid-based game, even though I didn't play as much of that as the other titles that I just mentioned. Give me grid-based tactical spin-offs of everything. Final Fantasy The Ivalice Chronicles is out later this month. What a time to be alive. Just give me turn-based strategy stuff. It's always awesome. But Ubisoft, for as much as they are, get talked about as shutting down every other week and not having their irons in the fire and whatever, the irons are definitely in the fire. Whether the furnace is on is a whole other thing. But as long as they can pay the bill and keep the thing going. But still, we have a lot of exciting sounding projects here, and it's nice that the variety of what's here is very promising. And I mentioned the Rayman remake before. That is elsewhere in the Insider Gaming report, but Henderson mentions that they covered it last October, which I totally missed, that there was already a Rayman remake in production. But we're going to talk a little bit more about Rayman later in the show as well, because there's another deal relating to Rayman that I want to shout out. But still, Ubisoft, if they can bring this all together, Awesome. And the last one, a small little thing, because it wouldn't be me if I didn't mention something cool regarding Atari. I swear I'll stop eventually, but I'm a big fan of their CEO Wade Rosen getting out there and talking about, the fact that they have this reputation for remasters and remakes. They own Digital Eclipse and Night Dive Studios, who are very much in the news right now. Digital Eclipse in the process of putting out the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. They are the absolute best in the game at reviving old builds of games, doing the making of documentaries, checking in with the various dev teams whilst they emulate the original games. So not only do you play the original games, but you can see how they were made alongside. I'm not sponsored by them at all. I just love this approach to video game preservation. I think it's the best way to do it. But that's what Digital Eclipse are doing. And then you also have Night Dive, who are resurrecting past titles, like the old Doom games, like Heretic and Hexen, or even 3D titles like The Thing or the System Shock games, getting into the guts of the code, changing the lighting engine, updating things like the framework, the control schemes, things like that. They are just doing the Lord's work, and I think it's awesome. And so the dude at the helm of all of that is the CEO Wade Rosen, and part of Atari's revival is, the entire thing is because he stepped in and said, hey, we should be doing this and this. That guy has recently weighed in and talked about his dream project to resurrect in regards to remasters or whatever they would do with them, and one of them is Snatcher. I'll read the full quote. Rosen says that his overall dream projects include Panzer Dragoon Saga or Ogre Battle or Snatcher. He says, I don't know if it would do well, but I'd probably push it through and make sure that we did it just because I would love to work on one of those. It has to all be balanced though. If this company is just what game does Wade want to work on, we would not be around for very long. Which is interesting. It's still that thing of, so far, dude seems to be making all the right decisions. But I mentioned Snatcher because that is one of the only remaining, high-profile cult classic titles that is yet to be available on modern hardware. If you don't know, Snatcher is like a thriller detective story, cyberpunk-style detective story by Hideo Kojima. It was the game that originally put him on the map before Metal Gear. And it's something I'm yet to play. Like, I've tried to emulate it a few times, but I've always kind of wanted to wait for a proper upscale of its graphics and make sure that it controlled very well, but very much a text-driven detective story with a lot of anime influence. There are clips of it, as far as I know, in the original Metal Gear when you first meet Otacon, and he shows there's some anime clips on screen when you first meet him. I'm pretty sure that's Snatcher, but still, someone mentioning Snatcher in 2025 with the money behind it to make it work is awesome. And I just, dude's the CEO, like, get on the phone, get on the blower to to one of your teams and have them reach out to Hideo Kojima and convince the man that it's worth doing. I have to imagine that unless Kojima would want to be personally involved in it, he should be okay letting a team as reputable and trusted as Atari with these two studios, Digital Eclipse or Night Dive, tackling this stuff. If we got a Digital Eclipse version of Snatcher where not only do you have the game to play through, but you have all the sit-down interviews with Kojima talking about the making-ofs and the art design and all that kind of stuff, like, that would be a dream. Like, come on, that's so obvious to put together. I'm getting very excited about past projects coming back, but I love the look of this game, and I've always wanted to play it, and I like the direction that Rosen's going in, so, fingers crossed. Next up, the Game Spotlight. Now, I'm still going through Chronos The New Dawn. I'm hoping to put a Let's Play thing together on the channel where I'm diving. You'll be able to see my first reactions to it. So we'll see how that thing goes. But the other game that I want to spotlight is Shinobi Art of Vengeance. Maybe the most pure fun action game of the year. Oh, dude, I covered this a good few weeks ago when the demo was out for the game. But now that I'm playing the full thing, it lives up to the hype and surpasses it. I love the fact that we have Shinobi Art of Vengeance and Ninja Gaiden Ragebound both together. Now, I know I mentioned both of them a good few weeks ago, and that was when I was playing through Gaiden, which is still fantastic. Such great games this year. But Ninja Gaiden Ragebound is awesome, and then Shinobi is like the more accessible, more easily playable, more over-the-top approach to side-scrolling ninja-based combat. Just the array of moves that you have in this game. Like, yes, it is a 2D action platformer, and I love the fact that when you kill an enemy, they just explode, like in the original Shinobi. But the soundtrack is so good. It's by T. Lopes, the guy that did Sonic Mania, and various other games as well, like Penny's Big Breakaway. T. Lopes' music is just outstanding. So you have this really great package of this incredibly confident, really vibrant art style that I'm going to talk about a little bit more later as well, because my trivia this week is related to Shinobi. But I just find that this overall Sega revival, project that they've got going on, where they're reviving Shinobi, Crazy Taxi, Golden Axe, and there's another one as well that I keep forgetting. It has put such a confident foot forward. I'm so glad that Shinobi is selling well as well. Like, it's in the top 10s on the various different consoles, which is just good to see. It's just a great game. But yeah, in terms of the way that you play, like I said, side-scrolling action platformer, you are busting out different specials. You can breathe fire. It's the first thing that you unlock, and then you get the likes of the other spells, the ninpo attacks that you got in the original Shinobi to just cover the entire screen in lightning or fire or whatever. The boss battles are super tight, they're super acrobatic, and just the general hit response is so solid. I'm absolutely loving the developers Lizard Cube for this. They're the guys that did Streets of Rage 4, when that franchise was revived and it had such a great, colorful, passionate art style. That is what they've carried across into Shinobi, and I think this is their best work yet. Like, Streets of Rage 4 was awesome, but I always found that bits of the AI and bits of the difficulty scaling didn't always work too well. It always kind of felt like you were getting kicked from off screen, which you could argue is a vintage Streets of Rage experience. But in Shinobi's case, I always feel like I'm fully, in control of everything that's happening, and very much able to dance around all these different enemies, doing all this stylish stuff, doing this insane move that when you weaken an enemy enough, and you can do it to multiple enemies at once, you can ostensibly freeze time and just cut all of them in half in one giant zigzag across the screen. What a awesome experience. It's one of those things that I'm just going to gush about, and maybe I will just record myself playing it so you can just watch what is ostensibly that N64 kid meme play Shinobi, because I'm just a beaming individual when I'm playing Shinobi. As a huge Shinobi fan anyway, I'm so glad that they have stuck the landing, and I'm weirdly super excited. Crazy Taxi was the other one. I'm really super excited for the way that Sega are tackling these classic games. I love that they have, going forward, it's like you've got Persona and the Yakuza Like a Dragon series, and all these other sort of like forward-looking franchises. But not only are they doing them, they can look to their history and do the best version of these old school titles as well. If they get right the physics, the driving, the arcade sensibility of Crazy Taxi, and you nail the soundtrack as well, like license a whole new bunch of pop punk bands, get pop on there, as well as all the old school bands, I think all this stuff could be great. Like, not to just completely lose my mind over it, but Shinobi really did make me go, oh, you guys know what you're doing. Like, oh, this is great. You've assigned the right studio. You've given the right amount of time to turn this thing over. It's just awesome. So yeah, shout out to Shinobi, man. That is by far my spotlighted game this week, and I can't wait to get through more of it. On to the overlooked games of the week, the part of the show that is blowing up more than the others. I might separate it and do it as a separate show or something. I might do it as a separate video, so we just have a place each week to specifically go for the overlooked games. If you would like that as a separate thing, let me know what you think down in the comments as to whether you would like an overlooked game show in itself. Maybe we'll call it just Good Overlooked Games Show or something. Just good game recommendations. We will see. But this week, though, I want to spotlight a couple myself, and then we'll get to the community's recommendations. My first one is UFO 50, something that came out a few weeks ago. It was part of a Nintendo indie stream, but I've been playing it a hell of a lot more since then. I've mentioned it on the show before, so I'll not spend too long on it, but I do feel that, as I'm playing through it and going through the different, the way that it's made up, it is a series of 50 different games, that I just feel like it needs more eyeballs on it. Like, I did see it in the sales chart, and then it dropped right off just after launch. So maybe it's surged and enough people are satisfied with it. But the overall idea for UFO 50 is imagining this fake console that didn't exist. I think it's called the LX50 or something like that, or the LV. And it was just an excuse for the developer to come up with an entire fake history for a console that never happened. And so you have all of these different homages to different gameplay styles from the 80s, mainly the 80s. It's mainly channeling the golden era of, like the early NES era and Atari, that crossover period where the industry was discovering different art styles and different game mechanics and, different ways to tell stories, or just drop you in the action and be like, okay, figure it out. And it means that UFO 50 is every single genre you could think of, but with really cool, innovative, fresh-feeling modern game mechanics put into these old art styles. And I think it's a great mesh. I love the idea of taking old-school art design and then doing something that makes it feel modern and makes it feel way more responsive than it did back in the day. And like I said, I know I've praised it in the past when that game was first announced, but now that I'm playing through it, the sheer variety of what's on offer is just awesome. I'm loving the fact that there are tactics games, there are mini RPGs in here, there are side-scrolling platformers, and then then there are other sort of more unique titles that feel, like they're from the late 80s. There's a whole one, I forget the name of it, but it's like you play as a couple of cars that paint as they drive, and you're trying to take up more of the screen and wipe out your other opponent by taking up more of the overall landscape. It's a lot like the multiplayer mode of Splatoon, but done with cars and done in a throwback top-down art style. So yeah, I want to shout out UFO 50 as one of my, the newer games that I feel is a bit overlooked. If you're an older gamer, you love the 80s, the 90s, that particular era, snap yourself up UFO 50. I think you'll have a good time with it. Or check out some footage of it and see what you think. I was really pleasantly blown away by it, and I think it's one of those titles that just is so super recommendable if you just love gameplay. If that's the thing that you're coming to video games for, and you just want to play a set of really cool game mechanics and game ideas, check out UFO 50. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. I also want to throw in Sword of the Sea. This is the new game from Giant Squid. It's the team that span off from That Game Company, who you'll know That Game Company from Journey way back in 2011. A seminal title in regards to getting gaming recognized as an art form, or various different video games that would make you feel or do something other than just shooting dudes or platforming or whatever. Nothing wrong with those things, but I feel like once we started getting more arty games, that helped widen the scope of what the industry could do. And Journey is just an incredible game. It's PlayStation exclusive, but very much still available today. It's remastered. It's a really cool little exploration-based game with a core message about unity and togetherness and progressing through life. And it has a really cool dynamic co-op element to it as well, where another player will just randomly join you, but you won't know their name, and you'll work through the game together. Very much a comment on life. You got to get through it together. But still, Journey's awesome. But over the years, That Game Company, headed by a dude called Genova Chen, who's one of my favorite auteurs, has said one of my favorite quotes in art history, that mature art ages with you, which I absolutely love. You can go back to certain things that were made with mature sensibilities and get more out of them as you grow. You can have art grow with you if something was made with the right sensibility at the core of it in the first place. It's why something like, I don't know, like old Pixar movies or whatever, certain scripts like Metal Gear Solid 2, something like that. If there were mature, worthwhile sensibilities at the heart of those scripts and those texts, then as you get older, you go back to it and go, oh, I see what I get way more out of this now that I'm growing up and I have these different perspectives to bring to the fore. Genova Chen's an awesome dude heading up That Game Company, but Giant Squid broke off from them, and they've recently put out Sword of the Sea. They also put out Abzu. Giant Squid are headed up by one of the art directors from That Game Company, and so the stuff that Giant Squid do tends to be a little bit less, let's say, narrative focused, and a lot more about the vibes, and very much a lot more about an insane art design and gorgeous music. Sword of the Sea has a composition by Austin Wintory, who is one of the best composers in the industry, or if not the world right now. But it's a really cool game. Like, it's pulling a lot from Journey in terms of an aesthetic, especially at the beginning. But alongside, surfing across the sands and being this third person, exploration game, you have a whole trick system where you're just surfing on a sword. And, it's almost like they saw the likes of the Tony Hawk's 3 and 4 remasters coming around and thought, hey, what if we do one of them, but in our style? And so you're unlocking these different parts of the environment. You can go back and forward, unlock all these different tricks and different abilities for your character, but it's all about momentum and kineticism and getting from A to B in the coolest way possible, whilst being completely immersed in this gorgeous art style and this great soundtrack. I found this to be so meditative and such a great place to escape into, at the end of a hard day kind of thing. And also the way that you're unlocking different parts of the environment and triggering this change as you explore, is by doing this really great graphical thing, this graphical trick where you're almost punching through the environment to reveal the water and this other landscape, this other biome that exists beneath. You'll have to see it in motion. I'll put it on screen. But it's a really great effect. And I think it's one of those things that feels like it's only possible on newer hardware, where it feels like the game is rendering two completely different biomes, and you're almost looking through like a interdimensional portal into a different world that's being rendered like directly underneath you. And you still surf over the water as you're unlocking these different parts of the environment, but just super, super cool. I'm yet to finish it, but I'm loving my time with it. It's just, there's so many games right now, like, whether it's so many games, there's so many demos to play or new full releases or whatever. But Sword of the Sea made made a really good, solid first impression. And also, it's on PlayStation Plus. If you already pay for PlayStation Plus Extra, it's over on there. It'll already be included in your subscription. So I'd recommend giving it a go. It's not a very big file size. It won't take you very long to see whether or not you enjoy the overall feel of it. But I was very pleasantly surprised by it. And I think Giant Squid seem to be harnessing a lot more of the overall tonalities that that game company used to be known for in the early 2010s. You know, they've gone on to do the likes of Sky, Children of the Light, which became like a mobile game, and it's like this expansive, you know, forever online multiplayer thing. It's very nicely done, but it's not the more solo, single-player, offline stuff that they, you know, made their name on in 2011. So if you're missing old school that game company, Sword of the Sea and the developer Giant Squid are probably what you're after. And Abzu is awesome as well, like I mentioned before. I just gushing. This is a week for gushing about games. As for the community suggestions, and you can leave your own down in the comments below on YouTube, or you can dive over on the Scott Tilford Discord and get involved in the Overlooked Games chat. That thing is flying. There are so many games that we collectively go, oh my god, did you play this? Yes, I did. Oh my god, did you play that? We have Wholesome Chaotic mentioning Absolver, which is the game from Slow Clap, the dudes that went on to do Sifu. Now, I feel like Sifu blew up so much that a lot of people think that was their first game. Absolver is a really slick online martial arts brawler, Souls-like type thing, where you're learning different martial arts moves, one animation at a time, like one punch, one kick, whatever, and you're stringing together your own custom combos while unlocking parts of a, you know, costumes, different attire, you're challenging different players. It's all about that sort of core ethos of learning a martial art in itself, like restraint, honor. You get to bow to other players, challenge them to fights while you're exploring the open world. There are different boss fights, there are ways to progress in general. The approach overall is this idea of what if we had this, you know, multifaceted level that doubled as ostensibly a dojo, where, you know, you also learn moves based on how much you can defend against them and have them done on you. So if you go up against a player that does some insanely sick spinning roundhouse, it's like, let me absorb that so I can, you know, quasi learn it, and then your character will learn it anyway. Then you get to equip it and do another custom combo, and then go back to that dude, fight them again, you know, go from there. Absolver is very much a stepping stone, or a game that was in the direction of what would become Sifu, but it's worth shouting that title out. It has such a great, like I said, core ethos, and it's fun seeing Slow Clap do so well. You know, they've got Sifu, which I love. It's such a hard game, but Sifu's fantastic, as another, you know, extremely resilient martial arts brawler. And then, you know, they've gone on to do Rematch, which is like a third-person football game, which I don't think anybody saw coming from them, but Rematch is doing quite well. I didn't vibe with Rematch as much. I feel like it needed a little bit more time in the oven to sort of refine some of the control schemes and the animations and stuff. But I follow them on social media, and they keep tweeting about how incredibly well the game is doing. So thankfully, they are absolutely flying. But before all of that momentum was Absolver, which I would still totally recommend. I imagine it is cheap as hell these days if you want something like that. Next, we have Null recommending Alpha Protocol. Alpha Protocol! I love this game. This is from Obsidian. This is maybe the coolest idea for a game. I'm doing the feels man meme face as I drag my hands down my face, because Alpha Protocol was such a sick idea. Came out in like 2009, made by Obsidian, you know, the absolute RPG kings, and it was ostensibly what if Mass Effect was a James Bond game, where you could customize your agent as you went through, you know, the story. The story was great as well, had great voice acting. Nolan North was a completely twisted villain in that game, but you could customize your agent. You could have all these different conversation options, different infiltration options, and different abilities that you could unlock in a very much a Mass Effect style way. Like, you had a headquarters, you had a place that you were going back to, your home base, but you were unlocking different gadgets, and just all that customization was in there. It was a killer idea for an IP. The only thing that it was undone by, arguably, was all of the gameplay, which I could put up with because I thought the concept was just so awesome. But because it was a hardcore RPG, you know, through and through, it meant that even headshots and gunplay were dice rolls. And it meant that even if you were aiming at a dude point blank, you could just completely miss them. It also meant that, and you know, in Obsidian's case, they're not exactly known for, you know, responsive third-person stealth games. So if you chose to play more stealthily, even that didn't really work too well. Like, in terms of the vision cones and understanding where enemies were, the stealth walk that they gave your dude looked a little bit naff. It was so close to a 10 out of 10, and then it was just a little bit undercooked in areas. But I'm all for, if I can see what you're going, I will champion it. I'm all for flawed ambition versus, boring perfection or boring, test audience to perfection. And Alpha Protocol is that kind of game, through and through, where I would love if it was available in modern hardware. It's not on backwards compatibility or anything like that. It was included in the sizzle reel that Microsoft put out when they acquired Bethesda and Obsidian and all those studios. And I was like, oh my God, are they doing a new Alpha Protocol? And then sadly not, but or not yet anyway. But yeah, man, Alpha Protocol was awesome. Again, one of the greatest ideas for a video game, and why not do more of it? As I'm recording this, we are merely hours until the new James Bond game gets shown off. So by the time this goes out, and the video version of this goes out, people will know what that game plays like. And that's from IO Interactive, who, again, they are the kings of stealth, the Hitman devs. And so maybe there'll be more customization in regards to how you can shape your version of Bond in that game. We'll have to wait and see. But if there is, that came from Alpha Protocol, and Alpha Protocol deserves to live once again. So shout out to Null, and shout out to recommending that game. It's awesome. Last recommendation, and again, we have a ton. I just thought I would cherry pick 3 for now, but the Overlooked Games channel is doing really well on the Discord. You can go get stuck into that, or you can leave the comments on the YouTube as well. I'm always having a look over the comments. I'll bring stuff across into next week's show. Like I said, the Just Good Game News is a weekly place to celebrate video games, and if we're talking overlooked titles, there are so many that never got their due, and we can do that here instead. So we do have a couple from the new gent who recommends Dark Sector. Dude, these games were from such a specific era of gaming where I feel like, you had Gears of War come out and then everybody started doing their spin on third-person shooting. And the new gent recommends Vanquish and Dark Sector, 2 titles that very much spawned from Gears of War. Vanquish was by Platinum, and that is a game that is just goes. Like, your dude is in this crazy mech suit, but you have boosters. So it's like you're doing cover shooting, you're engaging with enemies, but you can boost between cover. You can boost up to a dude and do a flying uppercut. It has a whole bunch of quick time events when you're taking on the bosses and everything else. There's also a smoke button. So if you want to just take a minute behind cover and just smoke for a bit, you can also flick the cigarette to the side, and any enemies will try and shoot it so you can get the drop on them by going around the other way. It was just such a great feeling game. Tons of slow motion. I'm a big fan of slow motion around these parts, including, various flips in slow-mo while you rip all of these enemies to shreds. You're fighting all these mechanized enemies. It's a whole crazy sci-fi global political plot about an interstellar Russian takeover that you're trying to stop. And the game is so hilariously written as well. Just a wall-to-wall recommendation for that. And Dark Sector gets referred to as, the cover shooter with the glaive, which is sensibly what it is. This was made by the dudes that would go on to make Warframe, and if you are a Warframe fan, you will recognize the Tenno armor as something that is very much associated with Warframe and is iconic now. That was first in Dark Sector. But Dark Sector was a cover shooter with quite chunky melee, but you could throw out this crazy alien spinning glaive thing and track it through the air in slow motion. Something like what Arkham Asylum would do with the Batarangs, where you would track them as they took out different enemies. The glaive, though, could just chop dudes in half, chop off legs, chop dudes in half. It was just so cool, man. And it was really weird because the main guy was voiced by, is he called Michael Rosenbaum, the guy that played Lex Luthor in Smallville? And it was such a weird role for him. I don't feel like he ever did any other games after that. But yeah, Dark Sector, I have very warm memories of just going up against all these really evil dudes in boiler suits as they all try and take cover and get the drop on you, and just being like, haha, I have my crazy glaive, let me throw this. One of those games that I would snap up in a heartbeat if it was available on a PlayStation Plus backwards compatibility library, anything like that. Just what an era. I'm so glad that we lived through this era. Hopefully you're watching this, you remember this, the 360 action era as well, because it was a glorious time. Next up, 3 game deals and 3 game deals, if you know what I'm saying, where I go through all of these storefronts, Nintendo, PlayStation, Sony, Microsoft, and see what the lowest, priced games are for titles that I would personally recommend. I nearly always keep these below £5, and the first of which is Carrion, a game that is on sale until the 10th of September for £3.99. Prices may vary, well, they will vary depending on where your region, but for £4, a game where you play as a crazy escaped tentacle alien thing is massively recommendable. This comes from Devolver Digital, and I did not enough games let you play as a crazy twisted villain in a really fun, over-the-top way. This is, if you imagine any, containment outbreak scene from your monster movie of choice, that is what Carrion is pulling from. Little bits of this where you've kind of got to get used to how to get around like the control scheme and the physics for this, and the creature that you're playing as, like I said, is this crazy weird tentacle thing. It reminds me a bit of the Rathtars in the Star Wars The Force Awakens. It's a little bit like that, but you are just consuming military enemies. They're all trying to shoot you. They're all screaming, "Oh God," as you take everybody out. It's just a pure escapist power fantasy thrill. And in terms of the gameplay, it does get mixed up with some puzzle elements and exploration elements where you have to try and choose specific paths through the levels. But I do think that for the sake of the price points, it's just such a stupid, over the top game. And I love the idea of just playing as a ridiculous monster. We don't really get that many villain focused games anymore. Thinking of something like an Overlord, the Overlord back in the day. So shout out to crazy slime monster games. There's not enough of them, to be honest. Next up, I mentioned I was going to talk about Rayman, and Rayman Legends is on sale for £3.99, also until the same date in September, and it's on the PlayStation Plus library. But Rayman Legends, if you're wondering why Rayman is a big deal, and you can argue that Rayman Legends is like this supercharged version of the original game's energy, but Rayman Legends by itself, you've got Rayman Origins and Rayman Legends. Both outstanding platformers with so much character. Origins was awesome, but Legends is the one to go with. It actually repackages certain levels. It brings them across from Origins anyway. But you have such a great mix of biomes and art styles. It just plays so well, and controlling Rayman feels awesome. You've got the hover, you've got the giant punches and the kicks and everything, as well as, certain music levels where you're playing on the beat, and they do really fun riffs on known songs, like they do like in-universe versions of them. Shout out to the Ubisoft art initiative that used to exist across the early 2010s, when they did Valiant Hearts and Child of Light and these Rayman games that were just art-focused titles that still played really well, but they had such great aesthetic styles that are just, very much head-turning art styles that are really fun to control. Last one is something that is on the Xbox store. It's down to £3.19 until the 9th of September. It's a little game called Fury, F-U-R-I, and one of my personal favorite games of all time. Just a really tight, incredibly hard, mind you. I wouldn't even call it like a hack and slash game, but it has this fantastic, I can't even find the words, stellar soundtrack, synthwave soundtrack, on par with the likes of Hotline Miami. But you're controlling this dude, this prisoner that is breaking out of this crazy space-based prison, going down one level at a time as you attempt to go from place to place to place. But the game is ostensibly a boss rush game. You do have, walking segments in between the bosses themselves where you're taking in the music, taking in the environments, and the overall, art style. But you're playing as this crazy, like, cyberpunk samurai looking guy, anime style guy, taking on all these different guards, all these different people that are trying to keep you contained as you escape one floor at a time. It's such a super tight, mechanically proficient and satisfying game to control and to master over time. Like really snappy dodges, lots of bullet hell stuff in here where you're shooting with the right analog stick as well as doing combos with the face buttons, dodging thousands of projectiles all at once depending on the boss themselves, and all the bosses are so expertly designed. So it's one of those that it is very hard, and certain bosses, I can't think of the name of the old man that you fight, that took me like 100 tries or something. That guy is crazy. There's also a secret boss towards the end that you can bypass. And my first run through the game, I was like, I'm going to watch the credits before I go back and fight this guy. But I just highly recommend it on a pure art level. Like I bought the vinyl for this thing. I have all the, the soundtrack's incredible. Carpenter Brute is on here, who you might know from Hotline Miami. And it's just super, super tight. And Fury is one of the purest action games you can play. If you want something that'll test you, but also be super rewarding, it's Fury. Next up, some tips and tricks. Sometimes they're game-based, sometimes they're just gaming life-based, something that might make your time on this earth as a gamer a little bit easier. And this week, as I'm still playing through so many different things, I did some Mafia tips, last week. Sometimes we'll do game-specific stuff, Death Stranding 2 if you go back a couple of weeks ago. The tip this week is just how the hell to access the demo list on the Switch 2 eShop, something that I mentioned on a previous episode of the Just Good Game Show, and apologies for the person who reached out to explain this to me. me. Hopefully I'll sift back through the Discord, I'll find your name, I'll put you in the video. But on the Switch 1, it was very easy to get a list of demos to see which games had demos. But on the Switch 2, you have to go on the search bar and then go down all the way past all of the suggestions from Nintendo, go on filtered search, and then you can finally go and tick the box on games that have a demo available. Because it's worth saying that across the last few years, developers have started embracing demos again. Across the 2010s, loads of them moved away from it. Obviously, some of it was the reality of making a video game. They just wanted to get to the finish line, etc. But now it's clearly, you know, it helps with the sale of a game if we actually get to play it for the, you know what we're getting in for on the consumer side. And, you know, there are demos out there for the likes of Shinobi. You literally have to go on the store, go on search, go all the way down, go on filtered search, and then you can go to software with a demo available, which I believe is that one as I play this in reverse. And then when you finally go on search, you'll get a whole bunch of games that you can actually play. I just wanted to mention that because I haven't been taking as much advantage of the list of demos as I could, because it didn't, you know, pop up in front of me as much as previously. But the array of games that are on here, you know, it's worth saying that there is a demo for the new Kirby, there's a demo for the new Shinobi, you know, there's a demo for Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and it's super rare that Nintendo do demos for their own games. They nearly always just fall back on, you know, this thing exists when Nintendo, you'll just go buy it. And so that kind of stuff is worth shouting out. And also there's a demo for my beloved 100-line Last Defense Academy. But yeah, my tip and trick for this week is to explore the demos on your local console, because I feel like developers are realizing that they're worthwhile again, which is something that all of us have been screaming about for about a decade now. Last thing is a little piece of trivia, just something that I thought was really cool. Now, I mentioned Shinobi earlier on, and I mentioned that game's art style. And as soon as you see Art of Vengeance in motion, or play it for yourself or whatever, it looks so handcrafted. And there are specific over-the-top special moves that you can do where it literally just looks like some art designer's, you know, like specific drawing is just coming to life. There's the initial one that you get where you control the flame dragon thing. Just looks like some dude drew the coolest dragon on Earth, and then they animated it after the fact. Well, I was looking into the making of the game, and that literally is the case. I found a quote from the art director Ben Fike talking about, and I'll read this out, it's from the PlayStation blog, with him saying, you know, Ben Fike says, "I'm a Shinobi kid. I quickly pitched my vision for what they wanted to do in terms of the combat. We make 2D titles. When I create drawings, it's like rendering what will be the same in the final game." And they go on in the PlayStation blog to talk about the different iterations of the combat for that game, and they wanted to make sure it was the right balance between skillful and just giving you an excuse to do something cool. But artistic flair and style is such a big part of the new Shinobi, and it's why I'm, you know, celebrating it so much. I think it's such an immediately satisfying game. But I just wanted to throw that in there, that it's just kind of cool that you have this art direction, this art style that is in itself animated versions of the sketches that the dude did in real life. And that's what they look like for the most part as well, in terms of the more over-the-top specials. Now, I know that that quote is about the wider approach to development and combat and the art style, but I just love that as another way of elevating Shinobi itself. It's only been out for, you know, the better part of a week at this point, but I'm absolutely loving it. So consider that game spotlighted, you know, in terms of me just singing its praises. I love me some Shinobi, and the more I find out about it, the more I enjoy its overall production, and the more I enjoy the way Sega are approaching these old titles and giving them such new leases of life. And that has been the Just Good Game News. So much stuff to celebrate, so much awesome stuff to play, to recommend, so many cool news stories and different overlooked games, weekly deals, etc. If you like this kind of thing and you would like an even bigger version of the show, which brings in community talking points, wider conversations, things that are on the Discord that are then extrapolated out, you can subscribe to the Just Good Game Show on your podcast feed of choice, or you can get it early by going to the Patreon, patreon.com/Tilford if you would like to get it a few days early. Massive thank you to everybody who has been watching every week. I'm 1 month in to doing this, and this is like episode 5 of the show, and I've been doing, you know, the solo freelance thing for just over a month now. So thank you so much for taking part in the show, taking part in the comments, taking part in the Discord, the Patreon, the podcast, etc. I love all of you. Hopefully you have a lovely weekend, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.